Busy beaches and parched parks, day 2 of an extreme heat warning, and now a drought too.
A drought has been declared across extensive parts of England after the driest summer for 50 years. It comes in the middle of a 4-day amber warning for extreme heat from the Met Office, which is in place for much of England and Wales until Sunday. Well, as you can see here, the areas affected include much of the southwest, parts of southern and central England and the east of England. It means more hosepipe bans are likely and water companies could bring in even stricter measures, including a ban on non-essential water use. Well, 4 water companies across England and Wales have already announced hosepipe bans, and today Yorkshire Water said it would also be imposing one from August the 26th. Scientists have warned that heat waves like the one we are currently experiencing are going to become more frequent and more intense as the world's climate continues to warm. And when you compare this image of the UK from August last year to this image taken yesterday, you can see the difference in cloud cover and just how dry the ground is in the south and east of the country. Our correspondent Helena Wilkinson has more.
Well, Tina, this is one of the areas that is now in drought. Like many parts of England, it's seen very little rain over the past 6 weeks. And you just need to take a look at the fields behind me to see the impact that that has been having. There is some rain forecast for early next week, but the Environment Agency said today that it will take weeks of rain for the drought to come to an end. And we're all being told to do our bit to save water. Fields where they're still trying to put out fires. This is West Bridgeford in Nottinghamshire. Vast parts of the country now look like this, dried out from the heat, desperate for water. And reservoirs low, like this one in Derbyshire. After nearly 6 weeks of dry conditions, a drought has been declared for parts of England. Southern, central and eastern areas are affected, including Devon and Cornwall, Kent, London and the East Midlands. Water companies can now bring in stricter measures to save water.
When you turn on a tap or you have a shower, that water comes out of rivers like this. That means we're taking it away from the environment or taking it away from a farmer that could be using it to irrigate or harvest crops that we all need for the food we need. So I think it's about signalling this is something beyond normal, and actually we all play a role in thinking about where our water comes from and use water wisely.
There are already hosepipe bans in place, with more on the way. From today, nearly 1.5 million South East water customers in Sussex and Kent are now banned from using them. In some areas, there are exemptions. Rule breakers could be fined £1,000. One of the areas banned is Haywards Heath in West Sussex. This allotment has suffered after nearly 6 weeks with little rain and dry conditions. Plots are bare, crops and flowers are dying. And the cost of living crisis, are people turning to this to try and support themselves in this way?
I think that's very true. I think there's a very real desire to say, where can we save some money? Where can we cut some corners?
In Fife, in Scotland, farmers are being temporarily banned from using water from the River Eden on their fields from midnight tomorrow. Although not officially declared a drought area, in Barry Island in South Wales, the warm weather has been good for business.
Financially, this helped us immensely. When we see weather forecasts like this hitting 30 degrees, we can cope.
We're now halfway through this extreme heat. There is forecast for some rain early next week, but the Environment Agency says we'll need weeks of rain to stop the drought affecting parts of England. Helena Wilkinson, BBC News, Surrey.
Well, as we just heard, hosepipe bans have come into force for millions of people as the low water levels and tinder dry conditions continue across the UK. So, which parts of the country are being affected and what more can people do to conserve water? Our climate editor Justin Rowlatt has more details. Justin.
Thanks, Tina. Well, this is where the drought has been declared. Look at that, more than half of England. And the Environment Agency says 2 other big English regions, look at this, Yorkshire and the West Midlands, are likely to be declared in drought by the end of this month. Now, this image gives you an idea of why the decision has been made. These are the areas where hosepipe bans are already in place. And we're being told that more bans are very likely on their way. Now, raising the dial to drought sounds dramatic, and that is the point. The government wants to encourage us all to use the country's scarce water supplies more wisely. So what can we do? Take a look at this. Here are some thoughts for you. No baths, only showers. Turn off the tap even when you're brushing your teeth. Fully loaded your appliances before they use them. Don't do half a wash, do a full wash. And finally, fix leaks. It's extraordinary how much water you can waste. 400 litres a day, apparently, from a leaking toilet. And of course, we should also be asking what the water companies are going to do. So here's some of the things they'll be doing. There's a desalination plant in London. They're going to be allowed to abstract, to take more water from rivers, and as well as more hosepipe bans. If things get worse, they could even order you to stop washing your car. Now, remember 1976? The water industry is saying the standpipes and water rationing that we saw in the UK during that famous drought will not happen during this one. And I've got some more bad news for you, I'm sorry to say. Look at this experiment from the University of Reading. This shows just how long it takes for water to soak into parched ground. Look at this, the wet grass, the cup is already empty. Over there, the dry ground has the water's barely gone in at all. What does it tell us? Well, it shows why the heavy rain forecast for next week is likely to lead to some flash flooding. And the weather extremes we've seen unfolding, look at this, across Europe this week are going to become more common. The climate science is very clear. It says heat waves will become more frequent and they will become more intense as our atmosphere continues to warm. And spare a thought for the Arctic. Look at this. This shows how much more rapidly the Arctic has been warming than the rest of the world since the Industrial Revolution. Look at it, that blushing red at the top there. It suggests, new research suggests it is actually warming even faster than thought, 4 times faster. And which tells us why it's so important that we keep on cutting carbon.
The dry summer for 50 years has led to the move, with some areas experiencing almost no rainfall at all amid the baking temperatures. More hosepipe bans are possible, but the public has been assured water supplies are safe. Well, our reporter Amy Lewis is in Devon tonight, one of the drought areas. Amy.
Well, yes, I'm in one of the counties that has been worst affected by that extreme weather. And earlier on today, a drought was declared here. Just today alone, it has been 35 degrees. For many here, that is unbearable. And for some, it is also bad for business. A picture that has been repeated around the country.
It is ground we would never normally see, but then this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. The driest July in almost 90 years is causing water shortages and leaving fields looking like sand dunes that in summertime should be covered in grazing cows. Instead, these dairy cattle in Crediton and Devon are staying in the shade and eating their way through their reserves for the winter and the farmers' profit.
Because of the hot weather, they're not eating so much, and also the milk goes down about 10%, about 2 litres a cow. So we're not getting so much milk, and then there's obviously the extra cost in making the silage and feeding the silage.
Normally this farm would produce 4.2 tonnes of grass a day. Instead, it's producing just 350 kilograms, a fall of more than 90%.
Here in Devon, like in other parts of the country, they had a record-breaking heat wave in July. That came after months of both hot and dry weather. In fact, last month was the driest July since 1935 across England.
And now the National Drought Group has declared a drought in most of the southwest, southern, central and eastern England. It means that water companies can trigger their drought plans, which could lead to more hosepipe bans and reducing water pressure in some areas. Levels at reservoirs across the country are falling fast. At Ardingly in West Sussex, there's only 40% left.
We're not ready for this drought, let alone those droughts that are coming in the future. We have failing infrastructure, we have water leaks all over the place.
But the government has defended its record on reducing leaks and believe they've brought in enough measures to control water shortages.
We've been investing in additional reservoir capacity and we've been reducing leaks in recent years. But there's also a short-term spike in leaks caused, paradoxically, exactly by the kind of stress caused to the ground by this dry weather event.
Yorkshire Water has become the latest company to announce a hosepipe ban. Their first in 27 years comes into force in a fortnight.
And when you hear the statistics about how much water is wasted through all the pipes and things, you think that the Yorkshire Water and other water companies should be redressing that before making us do their work for them.
It's everybody's responsibility to save it.
Many are willing the rain to fall, but when it does, it will take months to recover. Amy Lewis, ITV News in Devon.
Well, we're joined now by our weather presenter, Alex, who's in a Hook in Hampshire, where there was no rain at all in the whole of July. Alex, they must be crying out for some good news there, but presumably it will take a lot of rain to restore water levels.
Yes, it is going to take quite a few months for us to recover. I can tell you that there is actually some rain in the forecast, but unfortunately it does come with a warning. So on Monday, the Met Office have a thunderstorm warning kicking into place. And whilst many of us will be grateful for perhaps a thundery downpour, that could also lead to problems because the ground, even the ground that I'm stood on, is becoming like concrete. And that means that when it does eventually rain, much of that water is going to stay on the surface and could lead to surface water flooding, and that would be another set of problems that we would have to deal with. What water companies are praying for is really a slow trickle from now right the way through to the end of the year. We're not there yet. As we know, we're still in the midst of this heat wave. Today we saw a top temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, but it will start to cool down later on next week.
Well, millions of people now know they are living in those official drought areas. Joe Koshan is at Beale Water in Kent tonight, one of the areas affected. And Joe, how are the water levels looking where you are?
Well, Gamal, the water levels at Beale Water, the largest reservoir in the southeast, are currently at 60%. Typically at this time of year, they would be at 80%. That won't mean too much to viewers at home, but so let's give you an idea. This time last year, I would be standing in about 3 feet of water, and it's worrying that I'm not to bosses. The fear is that if it stays as hot and dry as it has over the last few weeks, through the rest of the summer, they could have problems, not necessarily now, but in the months of spring next year, in March and April time. They say they need a good few weeks of heavy rain to get back to a decent place. Now, hosepipe bans are already in place in much of this region, but we could see more stricter measures introduced by individual water companies, but that would be unprecedented to see.
Meanwhile, the amber heatwave warning and red fire risk alert remained in place today across much of England and Wales. Morrison's became the latest supermarket chain to stop selling disposable barbecue sets because of the high risk of triggering wildfires in bone-dry gardens, parks, fields and forests. And as Ellie Pitts reports, many care homes are taking special steps to protect their vulnerable residents from the dangerously high temperatures.
The combination of dry earth below and heat from above is making it no longer a case of if a fire will break out, but where. Today, one of those places was West Bridgford near Nottingham, where firefighters attempted to stop this pale land turning scorched black. Elsewhere in Hampshire, 800 bales of wheat and barley straw have been turned to a smouldering pile of debris.
Within a few minutes, the whole thing was alight. This is as bad as I've ever known it. And so the risk to man and beast is pretty great.
This relentless summer for those on the front line grinds on.
We don't see a prospect of this coming to an end anytime soon. And worse than that, obviously the effects of what are called, I think it's a technical term, dry thunderstorms, whereby there is no rain, but there is lightning, and the lightning is obviously a cause of ignition.
Alongside the extreme heat weather warning runs the amber heat health alert. Today it was extended until Tuesday. Centres like this one in North London provide a cool haven for some of the most vulnerable, but for others, care must come to them. Daily help arrives for John, who lives alone in Cheltenham.
It's very warm, isn't it? So one endures it, and hopefully it'll be followed by some rain and some cooler weather.
For care manager Michelle, hydration keeps her clients out of hospital.
So our real concerns are dehydration for our clients living in the community. Well, the worst case scenario, sadly, is someone passing away. That's been really honest, and that's really tragic.
As the weekend begins, some are basking in the heat, while others are feeling the full force of nature's reaction to the searing sun. Ellie Pitt, ITV News, Cheltenham.
After weeks of dry conditions and little rainfall, a drought has been declared across much of London and the surrounding areas. It comes on the second day of an extreme heat warning, with temperatures set to get even higher tomorrow. With more grass fires starting across the capital and an increasing number of calls for help, our emergency services are asking Londoners to keep safe over the coming days. In a moment, we'll find out more about the lack of rainfall. But first, let's hear from Thomas McGill, who's in Southend for us this evening. Thomas.
Well, yes, Victoria, scorching heat down here in Southend. Although at this time of night, there's also a really comfortable, lovely breeze coming off the Thames here on this part of the Thames. And it's been a very busy day here. Lots of people enjoying the beach. Of course, it's the summer holidays and the beach huts as well. More about them in a moment. But of course, the heat does bring its challenges. It also brings with it huge economic benefits to places like this. And as I've been finding out from the boss of Adventure Island, a big theme park just further down the road here, the combination of the heat, the summer holidays has proven quite a good combination.
It's the sun that just keeps on giving at the moment, isn't it? I mean, we've almost come to terms with it. It's just that each day you wake up, you've got beautiful sunshine. You know, people head to the coast, head to sunny Southend on the sea. We're always the driest and warmest place in the country anyway. But this time of year, it's just special. And we get that lovely sea breeze. It's really nice here.
And of course, it's been a rough period with the pandemic. This has been the first proper big summer. Has that helped, having the good weather?
I think it has, and I think from that, I think people stayed at home, as we know, and I think they like what we had to offer in this country, and I think that's paying off now as well. You know, so many people are saying, why would you go in, especially when the weather's like this? Why would you go abroad when you can stay in this country?
Well, exactly. That's the thoughts of many people down here today. Why would you go abroad when it's much hotter in parts of the United Kingdom today, and it's set to get even hotter? Hundreds out enjoying these amazing beach huts along the north bank of the Thames here. Let's speak to Jane and Steve, who have had a beach hut here for how long, Steve?
Well, my father-in-law bought it about 40 years ago. So the original one, but we've rebuilt it about 9 years ago made it more modern. So yeah.
And Jane, what benefits do you get from coming down here, and how often do you use it? Because, you know, we're spoilt at the moment with this weather.
We use it lots and lots, and love having family and friends here. Friends come down on the train, and lots of ladies' days with wine and all sorts. Lovely food, fish and chips, suppers.
And I suppose you're getting your real benefit this year. How often would you normally get a chance to come down here?
Well, we come down a couple of times a month, normally, but when the weather's like this, this is our third trip this week. We've got a couple booked for next week, and then a couple booked the week after with various friends and family coming down. And we always have celebrations down here. We've always had anniversaries down here and gatherings for the family, and it's great. It's absolutely great.
Fantastic. Well, talking about those friends, let's meet some of them who have come down with you today. We've got Albert and Thomas, and Will and Ruby. Albert, first of all, how have you enjoyed today? What have you been up to?
We have went in the sea. I've had 5 hot dogs, and we've went to get an ice cream.
See, 5 hot dogs, cranky. And Thomas, what have you been up to today?
We've been catching crabs, shrimps, fish from the sea like wall back there, and just having fun with my friends.
Amazing. And Will and Ruby, what have you enjoyed the most about coming down here? Have you been here before?
I've been here before, lots with my nan, but yeah, it's really fun.
And Ruby?
I've only been here like a few times. I went here last year and I went here today. That's the only times I've been here.
Better than going on a foreign holiday?
Maybe.
Well, listen, before we go, Thomas and Albert have been down picking crabs, which they want to show us. So talk me through what's in the bucket, Thomas.
So we have here shrimp and some fish. And in there we've got a crab army.
Oh, fantastic. Well, well done for that there. Well, let's now cross to my colleague Frankie McCamley, who is in Hyde Park for us this evening.
Yes, and good evening, Tom. And I think if anyone has been to any of London's parks or just walked past a little patch of grass that's exposed to this extreme heat, you may have noticed it looks very different. It's yellow, it's scorched, and some has even died, and it's now just soil. It looks like something that you'd see when you're on holiday in Spain. Now, it's not just the grass that's struggling, it's the trees too. And I've been speaking to Jason Taylor, who's the manager here at Hyde Park, to find out what they're trying to do to help.
We've put these bags around the trees which help distribute the water more slowly into the root zone, as opposed to actually letting it leach out across. A lot of trees have started dropping their leaves already. We're hoping that if this is just a one-off year, then the trees will be able to recover next year. I think the grass will recover if we get some good solid rain in the winter. Some of these bare areas, though, we are going to have to overseed.
It does feel cooler in the parks, doesn't it? Why?
Parks act as a massive heat sink for cities, and one of the best things is lakes as well. That really draws the heat out. So rather than the concrete acting as like a storage heater that releases during the day, the ground actually absorbs and distributes the heat.
Well, there you just heard it. It's cooler here in the parks. I can tell you right now it doesn't feel that way, but there is the odd breeze that helps. Now, what the parks are saying is they need a lot of rainfall, not just a little bit, because if we just have a little bit, it's going to run straight off, because the grass here, you can't see it right now, but it is so hard. So you wouldn't expect to hear me say this in London, in the UK, but all we need is some rain. But with drought declared in London and across the region, Tom Edwards has been finding out where London and the capital gets its water from.
London and the South East is covered by 4 water companies. The biggest is Thames Water. Every day it supplies 2.6 billion litres of water to 9 million customers. Nearly 75% of that water comes from rivers and reservoirs, and 25% from boreholes or aquifers, which are underground rocks that store water. All of those, though, rely on rain, and over the last 3 months there has only been 65% of the average rainfall. And here in the southeast we've had the driest July since 1836. All water companies at the moment are asking customers to use water responsibly, but they're not at the moment ruling out further hosepipe bans. Long-term, experts say water companies should be reducing leaks, building more reservoirs, and all of us should get used to warmer, drier summers due to our warming climate.
Well, the extreme heat brings a range of challenges, not just for the supply of water. It impacts travel, puts pressure on the emergency services and increases the risk to vulnerable people. The Mayor has also said today he's seriously concerned that London may experience severe flash flooding when rain does finally arrive. So how is the capital coping in the heat so far? Anna O'Neill has been finding out.
Papa 382 receiving.
High temperatures can mean high numbers of call-outs for London Ambulance Service. And with temperatures set to build into the mid-30s over the weekend, the service is expecting to be under pressure once again.
Around sort of 5,500, 6,000 calls is about what we would expect to see for the season. I would anticipate that it's going to rise a little bit more over the weekend. We would expect potentially up to around 7,000 calls, but it's quite hard to tell, really. It does depend on you know how busy the weather causes us to be.
Transport too is feeling the heat. Specialist rail teams are checking the tracks for buckling, and some trains are being forced to go slower.
The railway in the UK just isn't cut out for these kind of extreme temperatures. I mean, in the heat wave that we're experiencing at the moment, the rail temperatures can actually reach upwards of 50 degrees Celsius. And at those temperatures, the rails can expand and buckle.
And it wasn't leaves on the line, but feathers, as a hot and thirsty swan was found by the tracks in southwest London.
The swan was severely dehydrated, unfortunately, but they were able to pick it up. They took it away and they gave it some water, and it started to feel a bit better. And the swan is now in the care of a specialist swan sanctuary.
Keeping animals hydrated has also been the priority for London Zoo staff, who've been providing ice lollies to keep the animals cool.
We do go that extra mile and give the animals a few extra things. So the squirrel monkeys have got giant blocks of ice and some mini ice lollies to hold on to with their little hands. Our red river hogs are having some beautiful cold showers. And generally all the keepers are just paying a little bit of extra attention to make sure that animals have got everything they need in this heat wave.
But even though we're now in an official drought, if it rains next week, there could soon be too much surface water. A study by the University of Reading shows how little water the parched ground in the capital might absorb. The Mayor of London said today the capital may be unprepared for possible flash flooding.
A drought's been declared today. It's a very serious declaration that's been declared by the Environment Agency. Many of us can't remember the last time there was a drought. Confirmation that climate change is happening and it affects us and affects us now. It's a wake-up call, in my view, to not just politicians, in City Hall and across the country, but also the national government.
Anna O'Neill, BBC London.